We go to the UK now, where yesterday, some of us were a little bit bewildered by Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, announcing that the UK will recognize Palestine as a state by the United Nations meeting in September unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire. Those that are opposed to this idea are saying even the idea of recognizing Palestine would be a reward. This is what Israel says, that it would be a reward for Hamas. Apparently, some of the family members of some of those that are still kidnapped by Hamas are saying the same thing. Others are saying you can't use the recognition of Palestine as a bargaining chip. So we don't know where this is going, but at least there are timelines on his end to say in September, if you don't do right things, we are going to recognize Palestine as an independent state. France says, go for it. We started it. We appreciate the fact that you are catching on with regards to this important event. Of course, Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, they are unbothered about what is happening in Palestine. The maiming of the children, the maiming of innocent lives, men, women, and children. They just bother. They say there's no abject poverty in Palestine. Now, but at least you've got the U.S. president who seemingly took a different stance, saying that you can see it. Nobody can fake what we are seeing. And therefore, he made a pledge that they're going to support, through aid, the Palestinian people. There's a 10-hour cessation of hostilities. What's the end game? Apparently, not even the Israeli leadership knows what the end game is, because apparently they were asked by Trump at some point to say, "What is your end game?" And there was no clear answer with regards to that. Musa Mdunge is a political analyst based in the UK. Who else do we ask to make sense of all of this if it's not you, Musa? How are you, sir? Are you good?
I'm good, my brother. How are you?
I've played all my cards. You are the only card left now.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So what's going on? How should we be understanding this whole mess?
Well, look, it is a consequential moment. Let us remember that in 1948, when the establishment of the State of Israel was forced upon the people of Palestine, it was a labor government that was in power under Clement Attlee. So it is interesting that we find ourselves here again, where it's a labor government that is taking such a position of consequential change. But it just falls short because, remember, the Prime Minister used a very interesting word. Unless. That's very interesting. That, for me, almost cancels everything out, right? Because for the Prime Minister to put the position as he has put it, that Hamas must sign up to a ceasefire, and then he then says, but they must not take part in any future government, is very interesting. It's like the British government telling the ANC or the PAC during apartheid that, listen, sign up to a ceasefire on your armed struggle, but you will not be involved in a future South African government. It's not practical. And this is the first thing that if I were to advise the South African government on foreign policy, I would say you've got to hammer the point that the unless part doesn't work, because the South African example should show us that if you freeze out certain sections of the population in a negotiated settlement, you will have conflict and war. The only reason here, TK, we were able to sustain the peace after 94 was there was a recognition that you've got to recognize all parts of society. Yeah. And that's my challenge with Keir Starmer's approach here.
Yeah, the influence of Hamas in Palestine is not rooted across the Palestinian statehood, from what I understand. It is rooted mainly in Gaza, if my memory is not failing me. And then you have the Palestinian Authority. Some people say it is a reliable force from a diplomatic point of view, but some Palestinians accuse it of being useless, not being as assertive as they should be with regards to issues affecting Palestinians. Where does the balance come there? Because Hamas has put its head on the block to say we are going to liberate our country and we are going to fight, right? And then we've got the Palestinian Authority, which seemingly is approaching it in a diplomatic way, this particular fight. And yet, in most cases, they get overtaken by events that are led mainly by Hamas.
Yes, that is a challenge that really is facing, I guess, the world right now in terms of this matter. Because, yes, the Palestinian Authority is quite weak, especially after the death of its leader, Yasser Arafat, who was its most effective leader. You will remember in the 90s, the Oslo Accords, all of these things that, under Clinton almost brought a two-state solution. But unfortunately, the removal of an effective leader like that has fragmented.
And the killing of, what was his name? Was it Perez who was killed from Israeli side? Who was working
from the Israeli side? Yes, Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated. Right, and that then killed the process, because then the right-wing hawks in Israel then entered power, and on the Palestinian side, the extremists, if we were to name Hamas that, then also gained control in the Gaza Strip. That changed the psyche in terms of this issue. So basically, while one may welcome Keir Starmer's announcement, it really does fall short of a solid strategy here, because by excluding Hamas, already any political settlement is not going to work. Any future government will always be hamstringed by an extremist force, and it will undermine the stability of that government, and by virtue undermine peace in the long term. So it doesn't work.
How's the response been in the UK with regards to that big announcement yesterday?
Well, the population is split, right? And many do welcome, a younger population welcome Labour's move towards this. It is something that previous UK governments have lauded they would do at the right time, so it's not like it's a new idea. But certainly for Labour, there is pressure for Keir Starmer among his MPs. About 200 MPs have been pushing for the Prime Minister to recognize Palestine, to push for some sort of sanction against Netanyahu and his government. So there is a wind change moving in terms of the UK. And for Keir Starmer, it's understandable, given how weak the popularity of this Prime Minister is and how weak his mandate was. His victory was a very shallow 30% of the electorate, as though he got about more than 400 seats. He knows that it means that for the next election, they've got a lot of groundwork. So this is a potential electoral issue that he can really hitch on.
What's the Conservatives as an official opposition's argument?
Oh, man, the poor Conservatives, they are having a crisis here, because even on this position, they seem to be stuck where the UK was years ago. They don't really have a position. I would argue, TK, I'm not even looking at the Conservatives' response. I'm more concerned about reform. The new sort of Conservative Party, because recently polling showed that support for the Conservative Party sits at 16%. So it does present for them almost a catch-21 situation here. Do we change position? And if we do, that abandons our classical electoral base, many of whom are above 70. Right, many of them are baby boomers, and that's a challenge for them. Do they shift where the UK has shifted, or do they stick with their base? And right now, they stuck at nothing really. They don't really have much of a position here. Where Reform is the more interesting part in terms of what position will they take on this matter. Will they align themselves with Donald Trump as he has shifted, which will then make matters interesting.
Apparently, there's an open letter which was written by Israelis as well, lamenting the approach of Benjamin Netanyahu. And I know that I think it was last week, if my memory is not failing me, there was another letter which was signed by over 300 rabbis and rabbinical, I think they're called, students worldwide, many from Israel itself and from the USA, also about what Israel, to a large extent, is doing, the genocidal act against the Palestinians. What can you
Yeah,
tell us
look,
about those?
there's a growing sentiment, I think, even among the Jewish community, right, around this issue, that, if we really think carefully about the moral stance, yes, we can argue about the ethics of Hamas in terms of that October Day attack on Israel, but the subsequent action and response by the Israeli government has gone beyond the principle of proportionality, which is a principle of international law. It is the basis by which South Africa is able to stand before the ICJ and argue that there is a case of genocide, there is a case of crimes against humanity here. And I think for many within the Jewish sect, they see that in actual fact the response of the Netanyahu government undermines the very legitimacy,
Absolutely.
the very safety of an Israeli statehood. And that claim, with some even shifting completely, many are arguing that actual fact, the people who are occupying Israel now are not even, from a biological perspective, really the originators of that land.
Yeah.
There's an argument to be made for that.
Yeah.
That in actual fact, the Palestinians in Gaza, the Palestinians in West Bank, are the people and the rightful owners of that land. And there's a conversation to be had about how revisionist history has been since 1948 in terms
and this open letter by the rabbis is also quite telling. I mean, it starts off by saying the Jewish people face a grave moral crisis, threatening the very basis of Judaism as the ethical voice that it has been since the age of Israel's prophets. We cannot remain silent in confronting it. And then it goes on to say further down, but we cannot condone the mass killings of civilians, including a great many women, children, and the elderly, or the use of starvation as a weapon of war. Repeated statements of intention and actions by ministers in the government, by some officers in the army, and the behavior of criminality, violent settler groups in the West Bank, often with police and military support, have been major factors in bringing us to this crisis. The killing of huge numbers of Palestinians in Gaza, including those desperately seeking food, has been widely reported across media and cannot reasonably be denied. The severe limitation placed on humanitarian relief in Gaza and the policy of withholding of food, water, and medical supply from a needy civilian population contradict essential values of Judaism as we understand it. Ongoing, unprovoked attacks, including murder and theft against Arab populations in the West Bank, have been documented over and over again. We cannot keep silent. I mean, if there's no clarity here for anybody, then I don't know what clarity is.
Yeah, fundamentally, it is a clear argument. And also here, TK, if we were to, for my criticism for the Netanyahu government is, here is a people who are part of your population, fundamentally, who are citizens of your country, right? And if you as Netanyahu cannot listen to these rabbis or listen to these leaders, it's very interesting for a guy who has really pinned his political sort of rise on religious sentiment. It's interesting that their religious sentiment is shifting against him. And now whether this will shift to a broader political pressure in Israel that will see Netanyahu be removed, it will all depend really on the political will, but the pressure. We already know that the U.S. Special Envoy to Israel, Witkoff, is going to be in Israel, is going to be discussing these issues. It's the first sort of meeting in the past 6 months since there's been a deadlock in the ceasefire negotiations. So the fact that even among the Republican Party there's a shift, it's telling that clearly the changes that we need to see in this conflict are going to come from outside. And isn't it interesting, it's going to come from the person we most likely didn't think it would come from, the Republican Party, because there's a huge sort of financial connection between the state of Israel and the Republican Party. It will be interesting to see how does that relationship shift as the mega base that has been the bulwark of Trump's support now shifts against him on this
Quickly
matter.
before I let you go, I mean, others are asking, why is Hamas not releasing every other hostage? Because that would take away excuses from Israel. And apparently some Palestinians are also arguing the same thing as well.
Yes, it is a valid argument that can be raised, right? On a strategy perspective, it does make sense to therefore take back the moral argument away from the state of Israel, the government of Israel, back to them. But I would assume they know who they're dealing with here, right? They know who they're dealing with. Netanyahu is not Rabin. Right. And so for Hamas, they understand that this is perhaps a bargaining chip by maintaining their position, forcing Israel to a place whereby it looks morally wrong. And I think that was actually the strategy for Hamas. It was more to reveal the hand of Netanyahu in a way that would see global shift of support away from him, especially from the West, which has been the reason why he has been able to be so stubborn. He's always known he can go to Washington, go to Paris, go to London, he'll have friends, but that's shifting now.
Got you. Let's leave it at that. As always, thank you so much, my brother, for your insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Musa Mdunge, the political analyst who is in the UK.